Hey. Testing. Want to make sure you guys can hear me. I can hear myself take a deep breath, so I know we're going to let a couple more people join here. And, all right, I'm going to get right on camera here for you in a second. I'm going to let a couple more people join. We're going to talk a little bit more about the snow, and I'm going to send out a push alert here so a few more people can join as well. All right, let's see, we are doing that. All right, welcome, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on. I'll first come on here. Welcome to one of the final days that we're dealing with here to a very warm year, right? The number one thing is obviously the fact that we're talking about colder weather, and that's what I want to do, first and foremost. Weather impact meteorologist Gary Frank here. We're going to sit here and I'll see some of your questions. I'm going to run through the talk about Arctic air. And I know that a lot of people are starting to see it on social media, things like that. It's definitely going to get colder. I talked a little bit about it this evening, but with all the holiday stuff and the fact that it's been warm and foggy, the number one thing is, if you're just going to tune in for 2 seconds, I'm going to give you the too long didn't read version of this, right? So I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to get through the whole thing. We're going to talk about how the Arctic air and snow probabilities are going up over the next 7 to 10 days. And that's what we're going to focus on specifically. But the too long didn't read version, if you're just going to skip over the rest of what I'm going to say, the fact that it's going to get very cold to start January, there's no doubt about that. It's going to get very cold, and we have a decent snow potential, but we're pretty far from the track in total. So I want to talk about where this cold air is, how it's getting here, and how long it's going to stay here. So, like I said, once I get through this, you ask questions in the comments. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to try to look at it while I'm doing this. So, like I said, we'll get through this here. First and foremost, obviously, we've got colder air in Canada. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'll also go back and forth on this so you can see this on a full screen. We've got some cold air that's pretty much settled in Canada, right? We've got temperatures that are in the teens and 20s, but look further north, as we've got this going on, look further north because we've got some pretty significant cold air in Alaska. And you'll see this here where you have 17, 30 below, and yeah, I know that it's, in the evening there, but they're at the time of the year where the sun's always up or pretty close to it. But obviously it's going to be cold in Alaska. So, a lot of the times it stays there, that's okay. We've had, obviously it stayed there through most of December, right? But we need to find forcing mechanisms to get that down here. And we see that when we look at, obviously, some of these deep shades here, where we get these storms and these polar storms start to work their way around. I'm going to go real slow. You can see how they move around, they drag all this cold air. And that's what we're going to see here over the coming days. And I think what you'll notice here is some of them are going to work their way to the south. Being the first one, the start of the year. It's going to be colder at the start of the year. I'm still sold on the fact that we do not hit freezing until midnight probably on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. So that's where the cold air is going to settle in for us. And when we see that cold air, we're just going to be, let's call it regular January cold, right? We're going to get cold. We're going to be in the 30s and 40s. We're going to start off in the 20s. That's okay, right? But watch what happens when we see things over the 5th and the 6th. You'll notice this other little dip here, and if I put a little pause point here, I can point it out for you a little bit better. And I'm going to point this out right about here. This is the storm in question that we're going to be looking at here, especially as we head into next weekend. I think as I talk to you next Saturday or Sunday, well, really throughout the week, because I'm going to talk to you Monday and Tuesday at pretty great length here. And this is the storm in question that I think is going to be, does it move south? Does it move north? You'll notice where the upper level wind pattern is basically settling in here and giving us that opportunity for some of these storms. Where it's real cold here, obviously. We've just been the beneficiary of some real cold, warm air, and we're going to see this storm system dip down. And not only does it carry a great deal of cold air, but it's also going to tap into some moisture and bring some moisture with it. So where does this go? South or north? That's going to be an important point for us here as we head into the next few days, really. And keep in mind, I've got this peg. This is Saturday. So this particular model shows that it's Saturday, and you'll notice that over the next few days, look where that moves. It's colder, and I'll erase that one here. Well, I'll erase it in a second here. But notice where this even colder air bottles up. And that's where I think specifically you can really see this incredibly cold air. So I'll erase that one. It's this. I mean, look at this deep Arctic polar air. We talk about the polar vortex, things like that, dipping down. That's what we're talking about. And that's what you hear, because this is significant polar air by the middle of the week on January 8th. And we're starting to see signals that not only are we going to have colder air that settles in at a pretty consistent basis, but, you're also going to note that, for the most part, I would say you're still going to continue to look at really cold air that settles in for the first half of the week. So here's what that may look like. When we talk about how this cold air settles in, look at New Year's Eve. You don't see the pink shades that I just showed you here to the south. You don't see that quite as much. But what you do see here is some pretty significant cold air. Watch this dip down by New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. It's not as significantly cold, but watch that surge by the 4th, 5th, and 6th. And you'll see how that system drags down all that cold air. And I didn't put any temperatures on there yet because A, some of these numbers don't go out that far on this particular model, but also I'm going to show you in a different slide what the potential for some of these temperatures are. So you're looking at 4th, 5th, 6th, I mean really, really cold air. And that's where I'll pause it right there. Let's look at the 8th, because this is 10 days out, right? So when you're talking about, the significance of what it's like 10 days out, this is some pretty cold stuff here over the next couple of days. So I want to look at a couple of different models. Let's call this model number 2. And the only reason we started with 2 is because I didn't put the order in correctly. So we're going to start with 2 and then we'll go to 1. Regardless, they're different models here. And as I even switch this view so you don't see the little corner box of me, these are going to be drastically different. And I'll put these on a full screen in a second because, like I said, I switched them back and forth. So Model 1, 12 o'clock on Sunday. Look at the snowstorm this thing is producing throughout the entire Midwest, Louisville, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Kansas City. We're talking I-70 all the way across, right? I mean, and then ice to the south. A significant snowstorm being set up. But look at model number 2. It is also there. It's also snow is involved, and of course now it doesn't want to go back for me. That's okay. It's just moving a little slow, right? It is right there, right? So like I said, it's not quite there yet. And I think the main thing in that first model is it's delayed in its movement, right? It's a little further to the west, so these areas are hit with that first. But what we're seeing throughout many different models that I don't even have access to right now is the fact that we have the ability to see that snow coming, and there's going to be some storm set up, right? A lot of the times, every system that we've had so far this year has been, we're getting some sort of, it's a clipper system, it's going to tap into moisture, it's not going to be doing this, this, and this. Well, this one I think is going to tap into a little bit more moisture, and the cold air is there. There's no doubt about it, right? So I think that the potential for this is pretty high. It's just a matter of when it gets here. Is it Saturday? Is it Saturday night? Is it Sunday? Does it hang into Monday morning? I think the likelihood of accumulating snow is high. But let's talk about next weekend just as a general blanket statement here, because I think when you look at some of the things I just mentioned, the temperatures, it's going to get cold. Much colder weather is a virtual certainty. Now, the track is not there yet. This thing's still thousands of miles away. It hasn't even formed in the current state that we're going to see it yet. But from a timing standpoint, it's somewhere between January 4th to 7th that I think we're impacted. Of course, that includes Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever it may be. And of course, totals, let's be honest, we're days away from having that conversation, right? We could go from an inch. There are general model outputs that are going to put out some stupid numbers. You're going to see them on Facebook. whatever thing you're following, there are going to be a lot of really stupid numbers. That's not how it works. Those systems don't, they're going to, if you followed one from 7 days out, it's going to give you a different number every time. And as we start to see these systems form, the way that it works, and I'll flash back to this one for an example, is as we watch these storms develop, move over areas with more instruments, and they're measured a little bit better, that's when all that data starts to go into these computer models, and that's when you start to see that symmetry come in just a little bit, and that's where you get a better idea of what's going on. And even with some of these winter storm systems, 2-3 degrees make a huge difference. Now, I don't think cold is going to be a problem here for this one, so I just wanted to pause and talk about it that way. So in regards to that, now one of the main things here, doing something a little differently here, and I want to talk about this from a standpoint of what we're going to be discussing, because oftentimes we issue these weather impact alert days when we're going to have these systems, and I'll come back to me for a quick second here, or at least I'll come back on this. What I want you to look at here is, even when we're talking about this on the 7-day forecast, we've been warm for so much time. There are so many days here, in a period of days that I'm looking at for potential weather impact alert days. So I just want to start off with the first 10 days of January and pinpoint the 4th, 5th, and the 6th. Like I said, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of next week. That's where that storm potential and cold air may burst in as well. Okay, so that's one snow chance. That's when the first burst of Arctic air is. The second one, the 8th, 9th, and the 10th, I'm forecasting that we're going to get even more cold air at this point. So 4th, 5th, 6th, those are potential. One of those days, if not all of them, but let's say 1 or 2 of them at this point, will most likely be weather impact alert days. And we know which day is going to be the most likely impacted. That's when we'll start to change that. We'll let you know about that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. Not really going to change what we're thinking, like the same thing we're talking about here. 8th, 9th, and 10th, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's a matter of how cold is it going to be. That's what we're looking at. I mean, this is the day that I think that we're going to see that perhaps just throughout January, like the cold air is going to be significant. So for the first 10 days, our weather impact alert days, I think, there are no days specifically that we pinpointed just yet other than those 3. So I haven't colored any of them red on the 7-day. But the first 10 days of January, I want us to watch for Arctic air and snow coming in. Prepare the house, right? Scott tweeted us something about his dryer vents, cleaning the dryer vents. I would say do all the stuff that you can outside over the next couple of days while it's sloppy, it's soggy, you have the days, it's not raw outside, to prepare yourself so you don't have to do it when it's 10 degrees outside or even colder, because that's a very high likelihood that we're going to be dealing with something like that. So overall, prepare for very cold weather here. And I think, for the most part, that's the main story. I think, because look at some of this cold air. As I pop this back on, you'll see that, just on January 8th, I mean, this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and this particular model is showing some spots still in the single digits and some spots in the teens. And I wouldn't show you this if not a lot of them aren't looking like this at this point down the road. And I know this is days away. Temperature is a little bit easier to kind of give you a signal than it is precipitation. And so that's why we don't show you those specific storm systems necessarily 10 days away. But when you start to see the temperature signals like this, that's where it's a little bit more cut and dry. And I think that's what we're seeing. And just for an example, that same day, look at the morning. I mean, you're talking about feels like readings below 0. And I think we're going to get a steady die of this starting, like I mentioned, those particular days here in January 2025. So, like I said, 4th, 5th, 6th, those are the days that I would highlight for the potential for, snow and obviously colder air, right? Those are the potential 1 or 2 of those days. At least we're looking for the potential for weather impact alert days. And then 8th, 9th, and 10th, those are the other days that we're looking at for significant Arctic air that settles in. So, as a reminder, cold air settling in, we're going to pinpoint those days, but those are the days I want to look at in terms of potential for weather impact alert days here, as we're talking about significant cold air, accumulating snow, and consistent cold air in the region. So once we get below freezing, the 31st into the 1st, we really don't look back, and we're going to talk about probably pinpointing a snowfall day at some point during the 4th, 5th, or 6th, and 8th, 9th, and 10th. Maybe more snow down the road. That remains to be seen, but Arctic air is going to be in place. Those are the things that we're watching for you here on this Sunday night as we continue to keep you posted. There's an article regarding all this on KSDK.com. And of course, this will be left on 5 Plus, and this will be attached to that story as well. If you want to share it with some of your friends, family that is traveling throughout the rest of this week, and we'll have you keep you posted on that. For now, I will leave you on a ridiculous map of how cold it's going to be, because that's what you need to know as I continue to let you see this here and throw this on a full screen while I end this live stream, as there are no specific questions about that, as we continue to see things relatively quiet. Of course, here it's really warm right now, and it's going to be the warmest year on record, but that's something we'll get to later on.